Good morning. It is February the 18th. My name is Greg Simpson, and this is your daily Lenten devotional. We will be reading from the Old Testament this morning. We're going way back into Genesis. We're reading Genesis 9, and we're going to read verses 8 to 17. Now, if you are the sort of person who reads the Bible on a regular basis, you probably already, your little antenna are up saying, wait a minute, Genesis 9, I know what's going on here. And yes, this is right at the end of the Noah and the Ark story. Pretty much anybody who has been to Sunday school or maybe watched a video of vegetables teaching them about the Bible, they know this story. But we're going to leave all of the ark and the animals and all that behind, and we're going to skip straight to God's covenant with Noah and, in fact, all of creation, including you and me. So let's read Genesis 9, 8 to 17. Then God said to Noah and to his sons with him, "As for me, I am establishing my covenant with you and your descendants after you, and with every living creature that is with you, the birds, the domestic animals, and every animal of the earth with you, as many as came out of the ark. I establish my covenant with you, that never again shall all flesh be cut off by the waters of a flood, and never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth." God said, "This is the sign of the covenant that I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for all future generations. I have set my bow in the clouds, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. When I bring clouds over the earth and the bow is seen in the clouds, I will remember my covenant that is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh. And the waters shall never again become a flood to destroy all flesh. When the bow is in the clouds, I will see it and remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is on the earth." God said to Noah, "This is the sign of the covenant that I have established between me and all flesh that is on the earth." I've got like 3 or 4 things that really jump out at me that I want to get to, but let's kind of take them in order. First off, I think maybe we need to spend a little time on the editing. Like, he just said the same thing 3 times in a row, didn't he? Like, they could have shortened this up, do a little condensing. That's actually a really common and beautiful nature of some of these ancient Hebrew writings. Well, because they probably weren't writings so much. In fact, you go back to that time, and some statistics argue that maybe less than 1% of all humans in that time frame could even read and write. So why bother writing them? So we shared these stories orally. Verbally, we said them aloud, and sometimes those patterns of repetition make it easier to tell a story, or maybe easier to remember the most important parts of the story. And so one thing I learned fairly early on in my time in seminary was, when you encounter deeply repetitive things, pay attention, because these ancient people thought that was so important, they said it again. So, this is not an editorial error. It is, in fact, a giant flag warning us, this is an important thing. So thank goodness we're here today to discuss this important thing, the rainbow. Now, I did just kind of let on the fact that I recognize that this is ancient writing from very long time ago. If we look at the scope of human history, this is probably late Bronze Age. This is a very different people than we are today, and we can't help but read the scripture with our own modern understanding of exactly what's going on when we see a rainbow in the sky. And I don't want our post-Enlightenment, post-scientific revolution, brilliant understanding of some of the complications of how light reflects and refracts through water droplets in the atmosphere to minimize or to reduce the fact that a rainbow today is just as beautiful and spectacular as a rainbow was all those years ago. Is it any wonder that these ancient people took the rainbow and made it an important thing to talk about? Think for a minute that you are a person who doesn't have all of the scientific knowledge, all of the understanding that we have today. If you are the sort of person who lives and dies by whether the crops grow, then the weather patterns are critically important to you. And so, seeing sun and rain and clouds all at the same time showing up a rainbow, I mean, you and I know there's got to be sun and there's got to be rain or at least water in the atmosphere for a rainbow to show up. All of those things together had significance to an agriculture people who paid very close attention to the weather. In fact, we would be able to argue now that even with all of the weather apps on our phones, all the things that we think we know, we did not really understand or feel the weather anywhere near like they did then. And if you want an example of that, go find yourself an old farmer who's over 90 years old, who has lived and breathed and been on the land. They know weather in ways that those of us who haven't done it will never understand. So these ancient people took this to mean something truly magnificent. This was God's promise. This was God's covenant to the people to take care. To take care of the people, to take care of the animals, to take care of all living things, to take care of the entire earth. This is God speaking directly about stewardship. Now, if you've been around churches for much length of time, you probably have a little bit of a yucky feeling when I say the word stewardship, because that often winds up just being like one or two services in the middle of the year when we're really, really struggling for finances. And so we'll have a stewardship Sunday to make sure everybody bring their money. And that is a little tiny, tiny slice of what stewardship is. It has way more to do with caring for the world. And God in the rainbow promised to take care of the world. There would never be another calamity like the one that we had just seen and described. So then what does that mean to us today as we're reading this in the middle of Lent, as we look around the world around us and realize that there are some really broken and terrifying things going on in climate change? Now, I am not a climate change scientist, and so I'm not going to spend my time trying to prove or disprove, but I had a conversation just yesterday with a friend who is a few years older than me, who remembered days in his youth when the winters were never, ever, ever as warm as they are now. And he can very clearly see through his lifetime how February in southwestern Ontario in Canada has continually gotten warmer and warmer and warmer. And we were kind of joking about this just a couple of days ago because we were in the middle of a bit of a snowstorm, which is a really regular thing for the middle of February for Ontario, but it hasn't been for ages. The amount of snow that we receive in the winter has utterly changed over the years. So that is just anecdotal. That's not scientific evidence, but we know and see and feel that the climate around us is changing. And so if these ancient Bronze Age people were aware enough to recognize that God's commitment to take care of and steward the earth was something big enough to name an entire weather phenomenon after, don't you think we should maybe take notice of that as well? Should we maybe put a little more effort into stewardship, into caring for the earth? Now, I probably should name a second elephant in the room. This is not just a scientific conversation, but this is also a very political and a very politicized conversation. And here we are in a religious situation, and of course, you never mix church and politics. But the reality is, politics and wealth are deeply involved in this conversation, and sometimes they come out in exact contrast to the scientific discussions. This is not the time or place for that conversation. Instead, what I want each and one of us to do is to be reminded when we see a rainbow, whether it's the giant rainbow across the sky, sometimes with two full arcs reaching over, or whether it's just when you're spraying the garden and you can see the light through the spray and you see the rainbow there too. We need to take that as a reminder that if God cared enough to commit to Noah that there would never be another calamity like that again, then you and I had darn well better be able to commit that to one another as well. We need to be able to commit to the people on the floodplains that are being washed out with ridiculous floods, that we will do what we can to make sure that doesn't happen again. We need to commit to people who are dying because of absolutely catastrophic famines in places around the world, that we will do our little part to reduce our impact on the greater environmental situation. And if we do let the political and the wealth conversation enter this at least a little bit, then you and I need to commit to know where the difficulties are, identify those corporations, those political leaders, the situations that are leading to deeper and deeper climate change, and we need to call them out. We need to do whatever we can, whether that is boycott or advocate against, or perhaps even lobbying, whatever it is we need to do to make certain that that rainbow continues to be a reminder to everyone in the world that God promised there would not be that level of calamity again. Let us pray. God, we are automatically drawn in by the beauty of the rainbow. Many of us are naturally drawn to the outdoors and the natural world and all of these things that you created for us, this absolutely spectacular world around us. We are drawn to it. We know that we need it for our health and our livelihood and our very existence. And yet we slip so far away from your beautiful commitment, your covenant of stewardship. And we don't see that we too are called into this relationship. That you said there would not be a calamity like that again, and yet here we are taking steps closer and closer to calamity. Open our eyes, God, to see the rainbows around us, the reminders of your awesome creative power, the reminders of how we are involved deeply in caring for this creation, in caring for one another, in caring for all life on this planet. And we know that we are going to need your strength and your power to push back against the forces that are leading us towards calamity, because unfortunately those forces are largely inside of us. Our own selfishness and needs, or perhaps the corporate and systemic greed. But we have to push back, that your rainbow may continue to fly as a reminder of your commitment. God, we today commit back to you that we will care as you care for this world. Amen. Thank you so much for joining me this morning. And as I am talking about the world and creation, I can't help but be reminded that many of you are from all over the world. Lots of you have commented where you're from. If you haven't done so yet, please do. Just stick in the comments where you are from so that we can all see what an incredible global reach this communication, this time, this journey of Lent together has. Thank you, friends, all around the world, for being a part of this. And thank you for all of the little and big ways that you do take care of this beautiful planet we live on. Thank you for joining me here today. If you've missed any previous videos, you can click right there and you'll get them. You can click up there and subscribe, and I will see you again tomorrow morning. I love you all. Bye for now.